Hello, it's Dr. Moore, and in this video, I'm going to be introducing some important terms for our study of ecology and biodiversity. So ecology is the study of interactions between organisms and their environment. And it's important to remember that the environment includes both abiotic and biotic components. So the abiotic components of an environment are not biological. We're talking about things like rocks, rainfall, sunshine, wind, things that are not biological in nature. The biotic components of an ecosystem are biological. So we're talking about living things and also the products of their bodies. So mushrooms are a living thing, they're going to be biotic. A tree is a living thing, it's biotic. And also a dead log is biotic because it's the product of a living thing's body. So time to test yourself. Is a buffalo abiotic or biotic? A buffalo is a living thing. It's biotic. How about water running over rocks? Neither water nor rocks are biological entities, so water running over rocks is abiotic. How about a skull? A skull is a biotic component of the environment. It's the product of a living thing's body. And how about dung or poop? Is that abiotic or biotic? Dung is also biotic. It's the product of a living thing's body. So it's important to remember that ecology is looking at interactions between the abiotic and biotic environments. And these interactions can go in any direction. The biotic environment affects the abiotic environment. The abiotic environment affects the biotic environment. But also the biotic environment affects other components of the biotic environment. And the abiotic environment affects other components of the abiotic environment. So one example of how the abiotic environment affects the biotic environment is the effect of water salinity on oysters. So oysters require salinity or saltiness of about 8 parts per thousand. So if you look at this key over here, you see that that corresponds to this yellow color. So oysters require water that's somewhere between the colors of yellow and blue. So that's a good example of how the abiotic environment, or the saltiness or salinity of water, has an effect on the biotic environment or the range of oysters. So now it's your turn. Propose one way that the biotic environment affects the abiotic environment. Another way that we can divide ecology is looking at the levels of organization. So the smallest level of ecological organization is one individual organism. A bunch of organisms of the same species together in one place is called a population. And a bunch of populations together in one place makes up a community. Another way you can think of it is all the biotic components together in one place makes up the community. If we take a community and we add in the physical environments or the abiotic factors, then we have an ecosystem. And all ecosystems around the world that have similar abiotic components are called a biome. So one example of a biome is the tropical rainforest. So there are tropical rainforests in South America and in Africa and in Asia. And what makes them common or similar is that they have similar abiotic components, especially that they have warm weather year-round and also lots and lots of rainfall. And then the largest level of ecological organization is the biosphere, which includes every place on the planet where life is found. So again, time to test yourself. What level of organization does a school of tuna represent? I would describe a school of tuna as a population. It's a bunch of individuals of the same species all in one place. How about the chaparral? Chaparral are locations around the world that have similar climates. They have warm, sunny summers and cool, rainy winters. Chaparral is a biome. That's a place, or it's a bunch of ecosystems that have very similar abiotic characteristics, and in particular, very similar climates. And how about the organisms in Yellowstone National Park? I would describe the organisms in Yellowstone National Park as a community. It's a bunch of different populations of different species interacting in the same place. So this brings us to biodiversity, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the diversity of life on the planet. And there are 3 levels of biodiversity. There's ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. So we'll start with ecosystem diversity, which is the largest. Ecosystem diversity just reflects the fact that there are many different ecosystems on Earth. This map groups similar ecosystems into biomes. So you can see the Eastern United States and most of Europe and Eastern Asia are all lumped together in a temperate forest biome. But the fact is that each of those are unique ecosystems. And so each one of them is slightly different. And each ecosystem on this planet has its own collection of many different species, and that's species diversity. We don't even know how much species diversity is on the planet. There are 1.7 million known species, but we suspect that there are many more unknown species than known species. Most estimates put it at around maybe 10 million species on the planet. Of course, that number is shrinking every day because species are going extinct much faster than species are being formed by the process of speciation. And then within each one of the 10 million or so species that might exist on the planet, we have genetic diversity, which is the diversity of genes within a species. So this is a picture of humans. Humans are all one species, and we know we're the same species because we can interbreed. No matter where a person is from, they can interbreed with another person from anywhere on the planet. And genetic diversity is a good thing because it makes populations more resilient. So you can imagine perhaps a disease might emerge that will kill most of the human population. But if we have lots of diversity within our gene pool, it's possible that some people will have a particular copy of a gene, so some sort of genetic variant that will make them resistant to the disease and able to survive it. Genetic diversity is so valuable that humans have gone to great lengths to safeguard the genetic diversity of our crops. So this is a picture of the Svalbard seed vault. It's in northern Norway. It's on an island. And the purpose of this place is to preserve seeds from every crop that is grown by humans all across the planet. And the reason that we would want to do that is because we want to save and preserve that genetic diversity. Because it's possible that maybe there's some tomato that was grown only in one village in Peru that has a gene that we will want for something in the future. And so the people who designed this Svalbard seed vault were very careful in its placement. They chose an island that it doesn't have a lot of tectonic activity, so it's very unlikely that an earthquake or a volcano will interfere with this facility. They put it high enough in the mountains that even if sea levels do rise, that it shouldn't be affected by the rising seas. And of course, it's on an island in very far, far, far northern Norway, and the purpose of that is so that it stays cold to preserve the seeds. We keep it at negative 18 degrees Celsius, but because of its location, it's estimated that it would take 2 centuries for this facility to warm up to freezing. So it would take 200 years for this facility to go from negative 18 degrees to 0 degrees, just because of how carefully we chose its location. So I think that the case of the Svalbard seed vault shows just how valuable genetic diversity actually is. A sad story though, there has been some flooding at this location in the past year or two, and that's linked to climate change and the melting of the permafrost or the frozen soil that this is built into. So hopefully that's something that we can address in the future. So in this video, we talked about ecology, how it's the interactions between organisms and their environment. We distinguished between abiotic and biotic components of the environment. I introduced the levels of ecological organization, starting with individuals. Individuals of the same species form populations. Populations in the same location form communities. Communities plus the physical environment form ecosystems. Similar ecosystems are grouped into biomes, and all of the biomes on Earth together make the biosphere. And then we talked about biodiversity, or the diversity of life on Earth. And we looked specifically at 3 different levels. We looked at ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. And so that's it for our introductory video on ecology and biodiversity.